And we're back with the last video from Spain about pivot tables. Yay! So how do you make a pivot table in Excel? Not that kind of table. First, select the column or columns you want to analyze. So select the variable, click Insert, and then click Pivot Table. And one or more pivot tables will be suggested on the right of your screen in Excel. Then select Insert in a new sheet or the existing sheet, and you have your pivot table if that's the one you want. So that's 4 easy steps. Maybe it isn't the one you want. Maybe you wanted a little more complicated pivot table. So in that case, at the top, you'll see this option, Create Your Own Pivot Table. You can click New Sheet or Existing Sheet, but I would go ahead and click on New Sheet. If you want to make your own pivot table, after you select to put in a new sheet, select the variables you want by clicking the box next to each one, drag the variable you want for row into rows, delete the variables you don't want under values. The default for value is the sum of that variable, which we're going to use in the next example, and we'll discuss other possible values next week when we get into descriptive statistics. I know you can barely wait. I can hardly wait. All right, we're going to take a look at making a pivot table. The last several examples I used with Excel was Excel on the desktop. This is Office 365, so the one you'd use on the web. So it might look a little different. Like you see, if you click on data, it says analyze data. It doesn't have quite the fancy button it does in the desktop version. This is Excel in Office 365 that you can use on the web. I'm going to click on year, pick that as my variable, click insert and pivot table. And over here, this just happens to be what I wanted. I wanted the count of year. So that's it. I picked insert, I clicked on the variable, I picked insert, I clicked on pivot table, and it gave me what I wanted. So I'm just going to put that in a new sheet. And there is my frequency for each year, 1,119 problems were completed in 2014, 1596, 2015, and so on. That's a super easy way to do a pivot table. But let's say I wanted something a little more complicated. I'd like to see for the year, each year, the number of problems attempted and the number that were correct. So in this case, I'm going to select all 3 variables. And again, I'm already on insert, and I'm going to click pivot table. And it gives me a bunch of options, but I don't like any of them. I have something specific in mind. So over here where it says create your own pivot table, I'm going to click new sheet again. And now it gives me all the variables that I had selected. I want every one of those in the pivot table. So I'm going to click next to each one. And the first thing it gives me is the sum of each of those. Well, I definitely don't want the sum of year, and I really didn't want the sum of each of those. That's not what I want. But what I can do is I can drag year into rows. And now I have the sum of the problem attempts, the sum of problems correct, and the sum of year. Well, I don't want the sum of year. So I can click on that and pick remove field. And now this is what I want. I have for each year, the number of problems that were tried, because for each problem it said 1, they did it one time, or 0, they didn't do it. And then the number that were correct. And that's how easy it was. If I want to make a chart with that, now here, if I select this kind of annoying thing, it will give me suggested charts, right? And it always gives me a blank, and I hate that. So what I can do instead, a little trick here, I will select all of this, right click, select copy, just right click anywhere, put paste special, and then values only. Now it doesn't have the blank, and I'm just going to do the same thing, insert, pick the suggested chart, and now I get that chart without the blank. But I'm going to have to redo it now. Oh no, but since I know how to do it, it's fine. And now I have a chart and it doesn't have blank, but it's not exactly what I want. I can click on here to select data. And I don't want year, I just want the number of problems, the number of problems correct. So I'm just going to click on the little trash can, get rid of that. I don't want this to be 1, 2, 3 down here. I want it to be the year. So here where it says horizontal axis labels. I can pick add field and pick year. And now I've got my chart with year, with as the x-axis, with the two lines that I want. Now, maybe you didn't need to go to all that effort. If you were just looking at the graphs for yourself, you wouldn't care about that blank at the end, but it kind of bugged me. So if you want to get rid of it, that's how you get rid of it. And that's it for this week. Next week, we'll get into descriptive statistics, which is a lot of fun.